Per Wimmer, he is a founding astronaut over at Virgin Galactic. He joins me now from London. Per, good to see you. I want to ask you to go back to your first time in space and talk to us about some of your feelings, what you felt through, and it probably echoes what Alper Gezerov, the Turkish, first Turkish astronaut, is probably feeling right now.
Yeah, first and foremost, congratulations to the whole of Turkey. This is a very, very special moment to have the very, very first astronaut in space. And he will be an enormous source of inspiration for Turkey. Going to space is no small feat. I know there's been many rockets going up, but every rocket, we're always very excited. And fortunately, it looks like this is going to be a beautiful launch and a very, very exciting launch. Albert will currently experience a lot of G-forces on him. He'll be nicely strapped in, but he will have a lot of pressure on his chest and blood being pulled out of his head, effectively. But he'll be well trained for that. He's been through lots of tests and trials and centrifuge training, etc., in order to be ready for this very, very special moment. And he's in very good hands as well with Commander Michael Lopez Alegria, who has been to space this will be his sixth trip to space, believe it or not. It's just incredible.
Not only with the NASA's space shuttle program, but also on multiple SpaceX rockets as well. You can see some of the shots there inside the capsule of the Dragon 9 rocket with some of the astronauts that are securely strapped into that rocket, clapping, obviously celebrating that milestone, passing that 100-kilometer milestone. Talk to us about how much training actually goes into a mission like this.
Beautiful view there on the right-hand side of your screen of that.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. I mean, first and foremost, each of the three astronauts here, in addition to Michael, they're actually all military test flighters. So they're used to being up in the air. They're used to G-forces. So they would have done a great career in its own right as test pilots and would have done a lot of space-relevant training. But in order to train for a mission like this, they would have been doing centrifuge training, spinning around faster and faster, like you might have seen in James Bond Moonraker, except it's a bigger centrifuge they would have been training on. And you get to feel on your body exactly how it feels like going into space. It's very real. I've done centrifuge training both in Russia and in America. And when you get these G-forces coming in, you really feel it. It's sort of the equivalent of having 6, 7 people standing right on top of you if you're lying down on the floor. And they would have gone through all of that. They would also have flown weightlessness training, zero-G training, where they would have been in a specially built airplane, a 727 or an Airbus, where they've gone up to 16 kilometers and then nosedive down, creating weightlessness for sort of 20, 30 seconds at a time. Because the other once you've sort of gone through the pressure of going into space, the next thing is you've got to be used to get your body used to being in space and floating around. And actually a surprising amount of astronauts get nauseous and sometimes vomit even though they've gone through training. But the more you can train, the better it is and the more prepared they are for their mission as astronauts, in addition to what they obviously have to do up on the International Space Station with these 30 trials that they have to, test trials they have to do up there. So a lot of preparation would have gone into this, no doubt. But they're in very, very good hands. Very experienced team would have trained them. And even going into the program as tests, as fighter jet pilots, they would have known a lot.
Per, you know, I was watching John F. Kennedy's speech in the early 1960s where he pledged the American nation that they would do all that they could to put a man on the face of the moon by the end of the decade. That obviously happened in 1969. I think it was July of 1969. And for the better part of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the entire world was captivated by watching these space missions, which was essentially done by NASA only. And then I felt that sort of the world's attention kind of sort of faded out, died down. But then you actually had a second chapter, a revival, a renaissance in the interest in space travel with the formation of companies like Virgin Galactic. You're the founding astronaut there, Blue Origin, and obviously SpaceX. Talk to us about the importance of what the entry of these companies is doing for missions like this.
You're absolutely right. There's been a massive change within the space business in the past 5-10 years. During the Apollo era, which was a fantastic era, and let's not forget how much risk these Apollo astronauts took on board, because there was a lot of things was new territory. We haven't done it before. Even when Apollo 11 went up, they kind of weren't fully ready, but they still made it. And there was a lot of excitement about that. Can they make it, the first flight, the first landing on the moon, etc.? And you're right, then public opinion after Apollo 17 kind of lost a bit of interest. Now we're going through an area where lots of money are going into the private space sector. Private enterprises bring a lot to the table in terms of new innovations, cheaper cost. I mean, SpaceX, for instance, have lowered the cost of putting astronauts up there by a factor of at least 90%. Very, very significant cost savings, freeing up resources for NASA to do other things into deeper space. So there's a lot of change, and that change comes with a lot of excitement amongst the general public, amongst youth, who see that actually space could be for me. I could be going to space one day, and that is terribly exciting and very transformational. So space is at a cusp of a new era where lots of new things will be happening. There's a lot more satellites going up. There's even, Axiom even has a plan of building a new space station. I mean, who would have thought about that? A private space station. Incredible. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that are possible through technology and innovation. Private capital coming in, supplementing the government support from various countries, including obviously America. And all that is changing what we can do. And that will have real impact on people's lives on Earth, whether we realize it or not. But it will have real impact in terms of spotting weather differences, weather patterns, satellite imaging, shipping traffic, medical trials. We'll be able to do a lot of microgravity medical trials, some of which Albert will be doing up there in space when he's up there. And that will have a very, very big impact on what new drugs can come out, and we'll all benefit it here from Earth. But above all, space carries such an inspirational capacity to young people, including the 27 million Turkish people below 21 years old, that will also induce a lot of interest in engineering, science, etc. And that will be great for Turkey and the future of these youngsters. Absolutely inspirational. So we are going through a very exciting period within space at the moment, and hopefully a lot more exciting things to come.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if you sort of analyze some of the most popular words that would be searched on search engines in the next 14 days, especially in Turkey, are sort of space travel and companies like SpaceX and Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin. I'm fascinated, mesmerized by what Alper Gezeravcı is going through right now. You can see one of the astronauts smiling there on the left-hand side of your screen, obviously very happy with how the mission is going. And it's also interesting to see how the space race has sort of transitioned from this two-horse race that it was in the late 50s with the initial firing of Sputnik, the first satellite up into space by the Russians, and then obviously the Apollo mission, to transition from a two-horse race into what it is right now. India sending up rockets with hundreds of satellites. They were trying to do to land an orbiter on the dark side of the moon, on the south pole of the moon. China, obviously a big player coming up. And these are live pictures. I'm going to come back to you in just a second, but we should be expecting the docking of this Dragon 9 rocket in about 15 minutes. It is 22:00 GMT. About 15 minutes we expect docking with the ISS. Perry, you were mentioning how some of these experiments that these 4 astronauts will be conducting, 30 in total, 13 by Alper, how it's going to have a real impact on the lives that we live here down on Earth. Talk to us about how these experiments are decided upon, the experiment process up in space when it comes down, what the process goes through, and how it actually trickles down to our daily lives.
Yeah, there will obviously be a lot of people, scientists, who want to put their stuff or their experiments up into space, but there's a very organized process in terms of what is selected, certainly on governmental space missions, etc. But now you can obviously go private, so there's also an ability, if you have, as a company, the cash, you can basically buy a slot, effectively, and it's sort of priced per kilogram almost these days. Where you can either put up a satellite or you can put up your experiment into space, privately or governmentally. So these things are changing dramatically, almost by the year that goes by. But in terms of the scientific community, they will select what they think is going to be the most important of the day. One of the things that is incredibly important is for medical trials. So there are certain things that the pharmaceutical companies can do for new drug discoveries and drug developments on planet Earth. But some of these trials are so much better done in zero gravity, where there's no interference from gravity, and you get sort of perfect crystals, etc. That has the potential of creating new drugs that we can use on Earth and benefit humankind, etc. We might not think about the direct link, but us astronauts who see these kind of experiments, we're very much aware of the potential to transform things and bring new knowledge, new technology, new medical science back to planet Earth. Also, by going to space again and again, and by doing new things and new trials up there, you develop new technology. I mean, case in point with the Falcon X rocket in its own right, or indeed its big brother, the Starship, which SpaceX is working on as well. That is clearly pushing the boundaries, creating sort of the biggest rocket ever, bigger than the Saturn V rocket. And that, just the requirements to push the boundaries by going into space, because just like John F. Kennedy said, we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Technology development like that is hard, but in the process of that, there's a lot of side benefits that ends up sort of coming off the conveyor belt there that we can all benefit on in normal day-to-day lives. I mean, you could argue that the whole Apollo program gave an enormous boost to Silicon Valley and everything that followed that. Don't forget, when the Apollo missions took place, they had less computing power on board than you have in your mobile phone today. And they still managed to land on the moon. Absolutely incredible. So huge progress can be made through satellite imaging, seeing better what's going on the Earth, spotting climate change, spotting if there's big weather patterns that are coming out of a certain area in a much better way, keeping an eye on agricultural production and making that more efficient. Tons of things you can do with benefit for planet Earth as these astronauts get to have, no doubt, their ride of a lifetime here.
Yeah. Pat Wimmer, thank you very much for joining us here on our special coverage. Some great insight and some great information. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.